Be agreed to, and I call the member for Braddon.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise today to speak on the Tax Laws Amendment Combating Multinational Tax Avoidance Bill of 2015. As Australia competes on the global economic stage, Mr Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely essential that we take steps to ensure companies pay their fair share of tax. The government strongly believes that profits made in Australia should be taxed in Australia. That is why we are taking steps in this bill to implement 3 budget measures announced in May of this year. Currently, some multinational companies operating in our nation are avoiding paying the correct level of taxation through employing complex profit-shifting schemes. This not only leads to substantial amounts of foregone taxation, but also substantially disadvantages our local and smaller businesses, family and individual enterprise, who all pay their fair share. Today, this government is rectifying that disadvantage through strengthening tax compliance measures on multinational corporations with a global turnover of more than $1 billion. Businesses across my electorate of Braddon already compete on the global stage, and I'm proud to be part of a government that is levelling the playing field when it comes to paying tax. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Coalition's multinational anti-avoidance law will stop multinationals using complex schemes to avoid paying tax in Australia through booking their revenue overseas. We are empowering our Commissioner of Taxation to treat those multinationals as taxable here in Australia. Our country-by-country reporting elements are recommendations from the G20 and will ensure transparency in multinationals' income and tax paid in each country they operate in, greatly enhancing our capacity to chase foregone revenue. Concurrently, we are doubling the penalties applying to large companies engaging in tax avoidance or profit shifting. This government remains committed to delivering a fair share of tax back to the Australian people, and are delivering on that commitment today. Mr Speaker, the Coalition government is leading the fight against multinational tax avoidance. It is an issue we pursued as President of the G20 just last year. We fought to get it on the agenda of the G20, and we are now delivering on our rhetoric in this space. Australia led the global response to tax avoidance and continues to do so in this bill. This bill is consistent with the government's overall approach to this issue. In 2014, this government, under the previous Treasurer, strengthened our defences against multinational tax avoidance. We have already tightened our thin capitalisation rules, which substantially limited the scope for multinationals to claim excessive debt reduction. This government is also allocating unprecedented resources to the Australian Tax Office. We have provided an additional $87.6 million to the ATO over 3 years to investigate international tax avoidance. The program is estimated to have raised $1.1 billion. Our side of politics, Mr Deputy Speaker, is often accused of being run by big business. Well, I echo the words recently of the Prime Minister in refuting categorically that claim. This bill stands testament to the unshakable commitment of the Coalition to the Australian business sector. We govern with regard for the national interest, not the interest of some exterior body pulling the strings. That is why we have delivered free trade agreements with Japan, Korea and China, and that is why we've delivered the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We are creating jobs and growth through freer markets. Yet whilst on this side of the chamber we realise the importance of freer markets, we also have the national interest squarely in focus. This multinational tax avoidance bill delivers on our commitment to the Australian people. It is this government, and only this government, that can achieve both a broadening and deepening of our market access, whilst also setting the economic frameworks that will deliver effective taxation into the 21st century and beyond. Mr Deputy Speaker, I do think it's important to outline how this bill will result in better outcomes for the Australian people, and I believe it is best achieved in assessing how this legislation will operate once enacted. The Coalition is committed to simpler taxes, and that is why we propose why the process is so simple under this legislation. Under the multinational anti-avoidance law, we first establish that the company is a foreign company. We then assess if it has a global revenue of over $1 billion. We then establish if Australian sales have been booked overseas and assess if the principal purpose of the scheme was to avoid tax. If it is found that a foreign large company has been engaging in tax avoidance, they will pay the income tax on profit that should have been booked in Australia. They will pay interest on unpaid taxes, and they will pay a further 100% of the Australian tax avoided in the penalties. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is a serious solution to a serious problem and will deliver foregone revenue for the Australian taxpayer. This government is taking a responsible and measured stance on multinational tax avoidance in this bill. I am proud to stand against unfair tax avoidance by large multinational companies, and I welcome the benefits that this bill will bring to Australia and our citizens, and I commend the bill to the House.